"Your legacy ends here, Mom," my son whispered, right before his hand pushed me into the void. The last thing I remember was the sickening crack of bone on the unforgiving rocks below. But the fall only broke my body. The truth, my husband whispered to me next, shattered my soul. They thought they were writing my final chapter. They have no idea I'm about to write theirs. I'm so glad you're here. Let me know where you're watching from, and consider subscribing if you enjoy these stories. The wind whipped my hair across my face, but all I could see were my son's eyes. They were empty of love, holding nothing but a chilling, final ambition. His smile said everything his voice didn't need to. A hand on my back, a sudden shove, a world of nothing. Robert fell with me, his arm tangled with mine in a desperate, silent freefall that ended in a symphony of broken things. Above us, two silhouettes watched, waited, confirmed. I saw Olivia adjust her scarf, a small, impatient gesture I'd seen 100 times before a dinner party. Betrayal doesn't scream. It gets bored. They turned away, their work finally done. As their footsteps faded into the wind, I felt Robert's breath against my ear, a command, a lifeline, a plan. "Clara, pretend to be dead." Lying there, pretending to be dead, the mind does strange things. It doesn't stay in the darkness, bleeding on the rocks. It runs back to the light. My mind ran back to a perfect morning in late summer. I can still smell the sweet hay and the old leather, feel the warm sun on my face. This was our kingdom. 30 years of sweat and dirt and instinct poured into building the most respected horse-breeding farm in the country. Our legacy wasn't just in the land or the money. It was in the championship bloodlines, in the thunder of hooves on dirt, a powerful, living thing we had created together. It was a beautiful lie. Even then, our perfect picture had a crack right down the middle. His name was Samuel, my firstborn, the son who was meant to inherit it all, the son we lost 20 years ago. We never spoke of the accident, but his ghost was in every stall, his laughter in every echo of the stable. Have you ever looked back on a memory, only to see a completely different story playing out? I remember a day in the trophy room. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, glinting off the silver cups Samuel had won. Julian, then just a teenager, stood in the center of the room. He picked up Samuel's old riding crop from the mantelpiece. He weighed it, tested it, tapped it against his palm. A sound dry and impatient. Robert froze. I saw the color drain from his face, his smile collapsing into something brittle, something broken. He saw his living son holding a relic of his dead one, and a sudden terrible silence filled that sunlit room. He didn't say a word. He just turned and walked away. Some ghosts never leave the stable. At the time, I told myself it was just grief, a father's unbearable pain, but it was fear. I know that now. I saw Julian trace the braided leather of the crop, a flicker of something possessive in his eyes, a memory he shouldn't own. My husband couldn't bear to look. Some memories are heavier than others. That memory of the riding crop hung in our family for years, a question I never had the courage to ask, and a silence Robert never dared to break. It was a poison that seeped into everything, right up until the day our son decided to end his legacy. He came to us that morning with a smile I didn't recognize. It was too bright, too practiced. "Let's go for a ride," he'd said, "just the family." For old time's sake. Olivia stood beside him, her hand on his arm, a perfect portrait of a loving daughter-in-law. They spoke of our retirement, our health, of how much they wanted to finally shoulder the burden of the farm. Their words were like polished stones, smooth, round, and completely cold to the touch. We rode out on the North Trail, the autumn leaves crunching under the hooves. The air was crisp with the smell of pine and damp earth. A perfect day, a perfect family. Robert was quiet, his eyes fixed somewhere on the horizon. He was there, but he was gone. I watched Julian ahead of us, watched the confident way he sat in the saddle, as if he was already king of this land. He was playing the part he had rehearsed his entire life, the devoted, waiting son. A monster is not what he is. It's what he hides. We reached the narrow pass near the ridge. Julian's stallion, a powerful black horse named Midnight, hesitated for a moment, unsure of its footing on the loose rock. It was a flicker, a split second of animal instinct, but Julian's patience was a thin veneer. No words, no warning, just a brutal, calculated strike. I heard the sickening thud of his heel digging into the horse's ribs. I saw the animal flinch in pain, its eyes wide with shock. Olivia didn't even blink, and Robert looked away, just like he did in the trophy room all those years ago. And in that ugly, violent moment, I finally understood. The cruelty he showed that horse was the same cruelty that killed his brother. Kindness is a mask he wore for far too long. In the moment I understood the cruelty in my son's heart, I felt the world tilt beneath me. This time, there was no surprise, no shock, only gravity. The push was almost gentle, a final, definitive act. The fall was a quiet rush of wind and fading light, a long, lonely descent into darkness. I didn't fight. I didn't scream. You don't scream when you already know how the story ends. I woke to the taste of blood and cold earth. Pain was a dull, constant fire burning through my body. I tried to move, but my limbs wouldn't obey. Then I saw him, Robert, my husband, lying just a few feet away, his face a mask of agony. For a single foolish second, my heart ached for him, for us, two victims of our own son. But the pain in his eyes wasn't just from broken bones. It was older, deeper. It was the pain of guilt. I managed a single word, my voice a dry rasp. Why? He met my gaze, and his eyes gave him away. He wasn't just a victim. He was an accomplice. Clara, he choked out, his voice broken. This wasn't the first time. The physical pain vanished, replaced by an absolute freezing cold. I watched him, this man I had loved for 3 decades, as he finally confessed the truth he had carried since Samuel's death, the truth about the spooked horse, the truth about Julian's uncontrollable rage, the truth about the lie he told the sheriff, the lie he told me, the lie he had lived every single day for 20 years. He did it to protect our only remaining son. He did it because he was a coward. How do you mourn a life that was built on a lie? My son had pushed me off a cliff. My husband had let me live in a fantasy for 2 decades, only to watch me fall. One broke my body, the other broke my world. My son took 1 life. My husband buried 2. When your world is reduced to ash, you find a strange kind of clarity. The grief doesn't vanish. It crystallizes. It turns into something cold, hard, and sharp. In the sterile quiet of that hospital room, the only thing I could hear was the steady, rhythmic beep of the heart monitor. Beep, beep, beep. It wasn't the sound of my life hanging on. It was the sound of a clock counting down the moments until my revenge. The nurses came and went, voices of pity, hands of routine. But there was one, a young woman named Sarah. She didn't look at me with pity. She looked at me with a sharp, questioning intelligence. She saw something in my stillness that the others missed, a flicker of a soul behind the vacant stare. Have you ever had to trust a complete stranger with your life? During her next visit, as she adjusted my IV drip, I focused all the will I had left into my right index finger. One twitch, barely a movement. Her eyes met mine in the reflection of the monitor. She saw it. A silent question passed between us. I did it again. A pact was made without a single word. The next evening, Julian and Olivia came to visit. They brought flowers that smelled of fake sympathy. They stood over my bed, their voices low and conspiratorial. "The doctors say there's no brain activity," Julian whispered. "It's time." Olivia pulled a document from her purse. Power of attorney. They planned to use my thumbprint to sign away my own empire. That's when Sarah walked in. She checked my monitors, adjusted my pillow, and accidentally left her phone, screen down on my bedside table. She walked out. The trap was set. They thought they were talking to a ghost, discussing the money, arguing about the timeline, laughing about how easy it all was. They planned. They plotted. They confessed. They confessed to a dead woman. Justice isn't a storm. It's not loud or sudden. It's a tide. You just have to be patient enough to wait for it to come in. From my hospital bed, I could hear Olivia's performance in the hallway. Her sobs were loud, theatrical, perfectly rehearsed for the nurses passing by. Julian's voice was low, comforting, playing the part of the grieving son. They were building their alibi. They were crafting their new life. They had no idea their future was about to end in a sterile white corridor. 2 detectives arrived. No uniforms, no sirens. Just 2 quiet men in tired suits. I watched them through the crack in my door. They approached Julian and Olivia. I saw my son straighten up, his face a mask of indignation. "Can't you see we're in mourning?" he asked, his voice dripping with false pain. The older detective didn't answer. He simply took out a phone. The nurse's phone. He pressed play. The sound of my son's voice filled the hallway. Cold, calculating, cruel. His own words, his own laughter echoed off the tiled floors, stripping away his lies layer by layer. I watched the color drain from Olivia's face. I saw the flash of pure panic in Julian's eyes. He opened his mouth. He tried to speak. He choked on his own deceit. What does evil look like when its mask is torn away? The recording ended. A heavy silence fell over the hallway. The detective spoke again, his voice calm. "We also have your father's phone, Mr. Hayes, and a 20-year-old file on your brother's death." That's when he broke. He pointed a trembling finger at his wife. "It was her idea," he screamed, his voice shrill and ugly. "She planned everything." Olivia stared at him, her face a mess of disbelief and pure hatred. The sound of the first handcuff clicking shut was the loudest sound I had ever heard. Truth has its own time. A year has passed. Storms do end. The trials are over. The headlines have faded. Julian and Olivia are just whispers now, ghosts in a story I no longer tell. The farm is quieter these days, but it's a peaceful quiet, filled with the sound of the wind in the long grass and the laughter of our grandchildren. They are the reason we stayed. They are the reason we rebuilt. I watch my grandson, Leo, standing at the edge of the pasture. A newborn foal, all legs and wide, curious eyes, takes a hesitant step towards him. Leo holds out his small, trembling hand. He is so much like Samuel, the same gentle heart, the same fearless spirit. For a moment, the past and the future stand perfectly still in the golden afternoon light. Forgiveness is a complicated word. It's not a single act. It's a choice you make every morning. I watch Robert as he approaches the fence. He's older now. The weight of his 20-year lie has carved new lines into his face. There is a sadness in him that will never leave, but there is also a quiet, steady devotion. He doesn't ask for forgiveness. He earns it. In the small ways, every day. How do you rebuild a world that was built on lies? You start with one true thing. The foal nuzzles Leo's fingers, and he giggles, a sound of pure joy. I walk over and place my hand over his, showing him how to be gentle, how to be strong. Robert comes to my side. He slowly places his weathered hand over both of ours. 3 generations, 1 touch, a silent promise. In that moment under the warm sky, we weren't broken, we were just beginning. A legacy isn't inherited, it is rebuilt. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to join our community, and I'd be honored to read your own family stories in the comments.